the future of the insurance distribution workforce. And thank you all so much for joining. My name is Natalie Goen, and I'm on the corporate marketing team here at Salesforce. Before we begin, I would like to cover a few quick notes about our webinar platform. Today's webinar will be available on demand after we wrap up and will be accessible through the URL that you're on right now. Please note the slides will advance automatically throughout the presentation. To enlarge the slides, click the Enlarge Slides button located in the right-hand corner of your presentation window. Should you need technical assistance, click on the Help widget located on the bottom left corner of your console. We've also added some additional resources which are available through the Resources window to the right of the slides. There you can find additional related content. And lastly, we encourage you to submit questions at any time throughout the presentation using the Ask a Question widget at the bottom of your console. We'll get to as many of your questions as we can at the end of this presentation. And with that, I'm going to hand it off to Robbie to get us started.
Thank you, Natalie. I appreciate it. Good afternoon, everybody. Looking forward to today's discussion. Kathy, it's great to see you, as always.
Good to see you. Good to see you, Robbie.
Likewise. I'm coming live from Denver, Colorado. Kathy, where in the world are you today?
I'm in Chicago, Illinois, sunny Chicago.
Love it. Hopefully you got some nice fall days ahead of you there. Well, we're really excited, Kathy and I are, to I think have a discussion today that we're both passionate about, from Kathy's experience at Nationwide and Salesforce and spending years creating transformation in our industry, and from the unique vantage point that I have as the Chief Revenue Officer here at AgentSync, to talk about the future of insurance distribution, and specifically agent and agency-led distribution. There's been a little bit of a narrative, I think, around more and more distribution moving to direct-to-consumer, and the data doesn't really support that. It's still to this day 50, 60, 65%, depending on the line of business, of policies are written directly by agents, and yet the insurance distribution landscape is changing. And so we're going to talk a little bit about that topic today, a little bit about some of the data and the trends that we get to see given the unique vantage points of Salesforce and AgentSync and the ecosystem, and really like what you can do to get ahead of it and make sure that you continue to create value for your partners. Just really quickly for folks that are on this call that are not as familiar with AgentSync, AgentSync's a producer lifecycle management company. So we help brokerages, MGAs, carriers, and everybody kind of in the middle of that insurance value chain manage the entire life cycle of their agents, agencies, producers, and partners, all the way from onboarding through termination. Distribution's our bread and butter, and we have a really unique vantage point into the relationships that make distribution work in our industry. I've been looking forward to this discussion with Kathy for some time because of the unique vantage point that she and the team at Salesforce have. And we have been partnered with Salesforce since day one here at AgentSync. And so a little context on our business, we've raised over $150 million in venture financing and funds to help fuel our growth and the development of products. And we've now grown to serve hundreds of the largest players in the entire insurance industry. We've got a great partnership with Salesforce. We actually recently, Kathy, found out that we're the fastest growing partner in the insurance ecosystem and a top 2 partner overall. So excited to crack #1 next year. And we're looking forward to today's discussion. So I guess with that, let me hand it over to you, Kathy, to get us started on the first topic here.
Yeah, thanks, Robbie. And hi, everyone. My name's Kathy Lanning. I lead our team of financial services industry advisors here at Salesforce. And what makes us all distinctively different is that we all came from industry. And so I spent 13 years working in roles in marketing and sales across all of property and casualty, really learning the business, and have along the way done a couple of transformations when I was in that old chair with Salesforce. Today, I get the opportunity to really work broadly across our portfolio in insurance, in banking, and in wealth, and really excited about the partnership that we have founded here with AgentSync. Super proud of all the strong growth, super proud of seeing AgentSync being kind of #2, and I love the goal, Robbie, to be #1 next year. As many of you already know, Salesforce is the #1 CRM platform, and we use partnerships. We use partnerships really broadly, and partnerships like you see here with AgentSync, so that the platform can have really bespoke, specific, and important jobs to be done on the platform. And in this case, we're going to talk a lot about kind of what that means for agents. Before we get into it, though, we have to do a quick forward-looking statement. So we are going to talk a lot about software today and technology, but please make sure that all purchase decisions are made on generally available software. All right, now let's get to the good stuff. All right, so we're going to start really broadly on this topic because so much is going on, and it's a fascinating time to be in the industry. It's a fascinating time to be in the workforce. And what we're seeing is that the future of work is being reshaped. You see this in the press all the time, return to office and the pressures for that. But there's a couple of big drivers on this page that I think start to dimensionalize, what this means when we say the future of work is being reshaped. So just a couple of them. Today we see that the desire for the ability to have flexibility, specifically to be able to work remotely, is critically important. And at the same time, we're seeing this rise of the gig economy. So 75% of executives believe that a majority of their workforce will be an alternative work arrangement by 2025. And that's fascinating. You also see customer expectations rising. So right now, speed particularly, and almost all business models is critically important. And in insurance, we're seeing that customers are bringing expectations from retail, from CPG. They're bringing them into this industry, which is really speeding up the need for responsiveness. We're seeing technology being embraced really broadly across insurance operations, but one of the things that's surfacing is skill imbalances. So as technology and data really start to lean into not just like what they are, but how they shape work, how they shape outcomes, how they shape work processes, we're seeing that there's a little bit of a differentiation of what capabilities are needed for the workforce of the future. And some of that is because of the leaning into automation, AI, and analytics. There's a lot of jobs, and you've seen, again, a ton of press on this about what jobs will cease to exist in 5, 10, 15 years because of these tools. You also, we also hypothesize that there's jobs that we can't even envision yet that will be created. And then the new demographic mix. So really bringing in this Gen Z, also combined with the millennials and the Gen X's in the workforce, and seeing this demographic shift as aging populations kind of move forward and into retirement. But there's this digital native kind of posture with this next generation. They grew up with digital, they know digital, and it's their preferred way of communicating. So how does this show up in the context of what's happening for how we work together? And at Salesforce, we think about this in that there's like really seven big pivots, right? We believe that this is really around the fact that work of the future is going to look more asynchronous. It's going to be more skills-based. It's going to be more fluid, more automated, more intelligent, more personalized, and more connected. So what we're seeing is the ability to be always on, but off when you need to be. That you can be skills-based and not necessarily roles-based, right? And that opportunities will become in lateral movements, but that there'll be roles that are created experimentally and maybe resolved as work is done. Team structures now, we believe, will be more fluid. There'll be more agility based off of what business demands look like, and automation will be key. As work is orchestrated and manual tasks become a thing of the past, we do believe that there's going to be a really heavy leaning into automation of the mundane and the regular, so that human capital can be deployed against what problems need to be solved that are more complex, more interesting, and more abstract. AI and analytics are already huge. So in this industry, we see a ton of predictive intelligence, but really leaning also into generative and embracing what generative intelligence can bring when it comes to productivity. Personalization based off of a great set of data. Customers expect and agents expect you to know them and know their relationships. So having a personalized experience as well as personalized career pathing is really critical, along with connected, so digital first. So when you think about how we change, let's pull a couple more statistics that really dimensionalize this. So the talent in the workforce today is really looking for, like we talked about, flexibility. And in fact, 71% of employers are open to looking for a new job in the next year if they're not happy with their current level of flexibilities. And this flexibility is second from importance, only second to compensation when it comes to job satisfaction. Now, it hurts my heart to say this, but our industry and insurance is not a destination for college grads. You heard it here, Robbie.
Can't argue with that.
Most people kind of find their way into this industry, right? It kind of happens. And so when we think about how to get the best talent from this next generation, this is going to be really key, flexibility. All right, one more page of statistics, and then let's kind of make this real for what's next. So technology does play a big role in delivering experience for the customer and for the employee. And so when we look at the employee, there's some interesting statistics that show us that employees who report extraordinary growth over the past 12 months are also reporting that is really one of those drivers, is that their company has great technology. And the other statistic that you see on this page is just a tale as old as time. When you have a higher employee experience, you have a higher growth rate and customer satisfaction as well. And so we know it matters. We know that meeting the workforce where they are matters. We know that it drives revenue growth. We know that it's important now and increasingly in the future as we bring that next generation of talent in. So let's mash that up real quick. And I'm going to come to you, Robbie. I'd love to hear your point of view on this. So how does this all make its way into our industry, into insurance? And we just identified kind of 5 big ones that are starting to impact, agent experience and agent satisfaction. And so one is just recognizing this evolving workforce, then the fact that there's a lot of folks that have grown up. Maybe they've been, grown up with very technical and very specific experience, and they're aging out of the workforce. They're choosing to kind of opt out and retire. And one of the challenges that we start to see here is that they're bringing that wealth of knowledge and experience out of the industry with them. The next big challenge on top of that is, it's a really tough time to be in this industry right now, particularly if you're a carrier and particularly if you're sitting kind of with a personal lines portfolio. But I would say almost all brokers, almost all agencies, almost all carriers are very focused on this race for efficiency. So here this says cost takeout. Right, so we've got folks leaving the industry, expertise leaving the industry. We've got cost takeout as a focus. Agent expectations are going up. Agents want that human touch when it matters. They want to be empowered digitally at all times. They want you to know their relationship with them, and they want the consistency. So how do we think about operational consistency across a brokerage or across a carrier where the manual is automated, where the knowledge is codified, and there's consistency across these relationships? And then finally, the rise of intelligence. We talked a little bit about this before, but in this context, we see a lot of agents really relying on advice over price. And so they want to know more about their portfolios. They want to know more about what their customers need. They want to know about that experience so they can lean forward into the advice of protection. And having help, guided decisioning, and the ways to do that at scale is really, really important right now. Robbie, tell me, what are you guys seeing at AgentSync?
Well, you've hit on some of, I think, Kathy, the most important trends that we're going to need to solve together as an industry over the next decade. The first slide that you showed, 65% of all agents, and I'm going to pull it up here just to refresh myself. 65% of the global workforce will be composed of Millennials and Gen Z in the next 3 years, next 2 years actually, by 2025. If you look at the average age of like the insurance broker in the industry, there's a bunch of benchmarks, but it's typically north of 50 years old. There's a ton of M&A and acquisitions happening in the brokerage space, a lot of consolidation at the top of the market. Folks that are reaching retirement age and deciding to cash in, and you can't blame them for it. What does that mean? Well, the fact is 60% or so of all policies written are still written by a broker. But what we're seeing is that the broker population is aging, and there's this kind of vacuum that's being created for the next generation of distribution and brokers in our industry. And I think it's difficult, Kathy, to predict exactly what that's going to look like. I think that there's a number of components. You hit on one about making the insurance industry a little bit more of like a recruiting destination. for folks out of college. And I was smiling to myself when you said it's sometimes not the first choice, but the truth is once you're in, it's really hard to get out. Most people stay here for their whole career because I think most people don't understand just kind of how core insurance is to everything that we do, and how many interesting problems there are to solve in this industry. So you've got these different components, an aging broker workforce, the fact that the majority of policies are written by brokers, and kind of a next wave and a little bit of uncertainty about where that comes from. So what can you do? What's in your control? And I think that you've said it well here, which is focusing on agent experience. The way I think about this is how many folks in the audience today had a laptop when they were sitting in high school? Probably the majority or no. I was pen and paper myself, right? And when you think about the average 23, 24-year-old who's entering the workforce, most of these folks have been digital since early teenage years. It is an expectation that the operating systems of their life are going to be at a very, very high standard. And let's be honest, a lot of these operating systems that we're working on in our industry were built in the 80s or the 90s, and they've carried over. And so I think thinking about that agent experience as a really key investment to future-proof your distribution channel and be ready to attract the next generation of brokers is kind of a consistent theme, Kathy, that we hear from the folks that we're working with. And that means different things to every organization. But overall, that agent expectations column in the middle, I don't think we can overstate how different the expectations of a 20-something-year-old entering the workforce are from the average broker that works in the industry today. And that transformation and that change in our industry is coming, and it's coming very soon. And the question is sort of like, how do you approach solving it?
Yeah, I think those are great insights, Robbie. And I see it show up, in the context of the expectations from agents to we always say know me, right? So know my portfolio, know the relationship you have with me, be personalized. Agents understand agent segmentation. They get it, right? And they expect differentiated treatment. But where they have a strong relationship and have made a commitment, they want that recognized in the relationship and in the experience that's delivered. And that's so key to the satisfaction and honestly, where and how they place risk, right? Yeah. The other one I would talk about is speed when it comes to kind of that agent expectations column. And that shows up in the context, I think, of, if I have a submission, don't give me that slow no, right? I want to know where I stand from a submission, or if I was a claim event for a policyholder, I want my expectation is excellence and speed to resolution, but also transparency. I want to know throughout the process. And even as a carrier, if you're going to make changes, whether it's premium change notifications or account rounding recommendations, to be able to know those and have a transparent relationship. And all of those things are really fueled by digital and data, which I think is pretty exciting. I
do too. And I think one of the coolest things about this, Kathy, is we're not talking about something that is sort of ephemeral and hard to reach. There are companies doing this and accomplishing this and doing amazing things on the platform every single day, where you've got this 360-degree view of the agent and the agency that follows them through that entire policy life cycle and that entire producer life cycle as well. And when you have that kind of backbone of visibility and a standard data model, you're able to create some really amazing experiences that could differentiate you from your competitors and the rest of the market. And being at Dreamforce just a couple of weeks ago, it was really cool to see some examples of some leading insurance companies kind of leaning into that and taking the lead. And I think most of those videos are available online for folks that might be interested. But it's possible. It's possible to do these things.
It is. There's great success stories, and you can find those all on Salesforce Plus if you're interested. But you're right, Robbie. I mean, this isn't some remote future that's super far out. You saw those statistics in this conversation that Robbie and I have had. This is really this is now. This is in 2025. These trends will be live in the marketplace. And so the time to prepare is now. Let me just share 2 more slides before we kind of make it real with a little bit of software. So at Salesforce, we talk a lot about productivity. And I would say this is one of the key themes, regardless of where you sit, agent, broker, or carrier. the idea of productivity is critical. And we define it as the ability to work faster, work smarter, and work from anywhere. And so underneath that, by what we mean is for working faster, how might we improve the employee management and service experience, right? So the key capabilities that we think about there are kind of unified, right? One-stop shop, like the ability to not have to swivel back and forth. It's integrated. Your information is all in the one place you need, and it's streamlined. So if you have end-to-end case management, if you're able to see processes and flows and know where you stand, like you can be agile and move faster. For smarter, we think it's about enablement for better decisions. And this is also where intelligence, I mentioned guided decisioning. It's such a critical and interesting place when you think about consistency of operations, but using automation and data for intelligence and insights. The ability to understand and make a contextually better decision at any time in any workflow is super powerful. And then finally, the work from anywhere. This leans into some of the earlier data you saw about flexibility and the need for it. But in order to do that well as a broader organization, it's about the ability to work asynchronously with all the information you need, work collaboratively. So we don't work in silos. We're still harnessing the full power of an organization and be connected. So that means connected to, your organization, your teammates, and anyone that's kind of working on any sort of workflow with you, but most importantly, with third parties. Very rarely does a company only work within itself. In fact, I would argue almost never. And so to have that connectivity is critical. So this shows up in this is the platform. This is kind of the Salesforce point of view on what a really great kind of agent-centric experience would look like. And you'll see on the left-hand side, and this is where Robbie's going to kind of double click a little bit in just a second, the idea of agent recruitment and then onboarding and training, getting to licensing and first sell as fast as possible so that great experience starts at hello. And then around the wheel, you just see the 4 major capabilities that we believe are really important for anyone in distribution in the industry. And I won't talk about all of the capabilities on the outside of the wheel, but it is, hopefully you can see, the ability to understand a portfolio on a fact basis with data, the ability to leverage that data to manage the performance of that portfolio, everything from kind of what's happening through pipeline and forecasting, the ability to administratively lean in from a leadership perspective, identifying best practices, coaching a team of maybe junior producers, be able to see maybe where someone needs help. So how are activities translating to outcomes? And then finally, the relationship management piece of this. So this is really empowering anyone in distribution to build a relationship over time and deepen that. Be there at the moments that matter with very simple clicks and with information. So Robbie, let me turn it back to you. What do you see here on this slide, and what are the key things that I missed?
I see a pretty comprehensive view into what it takes to differentiate yourself when you think about your distribution channel and the types of things that leading companies are working on to create this real-time unified experience that's very agent-centric. And it's more than just a pretty dashboard, right? It's the operations of your business on the back end and making sure that all of these different core components of the producer lifecycle are talking to one another and visible, and then you pass that value through to the agent in terms of the time that you save them to work with you. And I think AgentSync has a really unique perspective on the front part of this sales process and sort of onboarding agents and getting folks in the door. And I'm excited to kind of share a little bit more about what that looks like here with the team.
Let's do that.
Perfect. All right. Well, what I'm going to try and do here is give our audience a 4.5-minute demonstration that covers everything in the entire universe of compliance, onboarding, and distribution management. I'm just kidding. We're going to do a little bit of a teaser here because I think it's easy to sometimes sometimes it's difficult to understand unless you can actually see and feel the software. So what we're going to do is do a quick kind of onboarding process end to end. I'm going to take the audience through what does it look like for an agent to sort of raise their hand to start working with your business, and take them through all the way through the ready to sell process, including the background check, the licensing, the appointment, the producer agreement, everything kind of in the middle. And the idea here is to give a little bit of a teaser, and for folks that are interested in learning more, we'll talk about that at the end of the call. So without further ado, I'm going to jump to the next slide. This may take just a moment to load. All right, so what we're looking at here is basically an onboarding portal, right? This is an intuitive portal for easy and streamlined onboarding experiences for both internal and external producers. A lot of this is done today in our industry by paper. What AgentSync enables you to do is take this paper-based process, reduce data entry and manual work for producers, and take the time of onboarding from weeks down to days. And that's across all states and all lines of business. So you can see here in just a few clicks, I've raised my hand to get started as a producer to start working with this agency. Now let's take a look over at the admin view of what does it look like when we actually receive this request. So I'm going to start, this will be a familiar view for a lot of folks on the contact record. And basically what we're doing here is we're taking that national producer number and we're pinging it out to the NIPR database so that in real time we can pull back all the licenses, carrier appointments, biographic, and firmographic information. So you can see now that we've pulled back all of this agent's licenses and appointment information. They'll populate here in just a bit, and you'll now have real-time visibility into where this agent is ready to sell. And the best part about this is that we ping NIPR every single day on your behalf so that your information is never out of date. You can move from managing this reactively to managing it, from proactively to reactively, meaning you can wait and AgentSync will tell you when there's something that's out of sorts as it relates to licensing, appointing, and ready to sell status. This gives you up-to-date records and reporting daily instead of monthly or even annually about your producers, and you can carry that data over into all your downstream systems and tell them when they're ready to sell. Let's pop over to the admin view and take a look at, have we had any new onboarding requests come in? Looks like on the top there, we had a new onboarding request come in from Eugene. Now let's quickly go through our scorecard. This is proprietary AgentSync technology, where we basically create a sales territory for the agent that's onboarded. This is all automated. And we look at, is this agent licensed and appointed in the right states for the right line of business and the right products to ultimately be ready to sell for their given territory? And once we've done that, we can send the producer agreement. AgentSync, being built on the platform, has a ton of out-of-the-box integrations. DocuSign's a great example of this. We often have to get agreements signed with producers. The nice part about this is because we've pulled all that demographic data down from NIPR, we can automatically map it into this DocuSign agreement with name, NPN number, tax ID, agency name, so that we're not asking the agent to repeat information that we already know about them. We send that information out to the producer, and now they've got an opportunity from their cell phone to click and sign. Once that agreement is signed, we continue moving them through the process, and we're able to look at the compliance scorecard. Now, we're going to look here at some of the existing appointments. We'll jump back over to licenses. Let's say that this is a captive agent that works for us that we need to get some licenses done for. What we've done here was we've done a bulk transaction with NIPR directly. So we've just clicked a single button and we've batch requested about a dozen licenses across a couple different lines of business with health and life here. And AgentSync's capable with a single click of the button of batching up to 5,000 licenses for submission, or 5,000 appointments for submission with a single click. The nice part here is we can automatically handle complex workflows, things like just-in-time appointments as an example. We're able to do those fully automated for customers, which typically represents a pretty significant cost savings. Now let's jump over to the dashboards. So again, one of the great parts about Salesforce and being built on the platform, the reporting, the visibility, and ultimately these visually engaging and interactive dashboards, right? These are going to help you track KPIs and identify trends about your producers and ultimately make decisions, right? And for example, what we're looking at here, all of the other carriers that our producers are appointed with right now, right? Who are we competing with for share of wallet by line of business, by state, by product? And so these are insights that we can then, that we've gathered during the onboarding process, just simply through the collection of that NPN, that we can then carry over to our marketing and sales teams to create a more personalized experience when we're thinking about working with those distributors that we work with today. So I think that is my 4.5 minutes. Kathy, how'd I do?
Amazing. It was great.
I'm a little out of breath. I'm not going to lie. But in a nutshell, that is kind of one of the core workflows, to put it into context for our audience, that AgentSync would solve for our customers. We can do that either embedded into your existing Salesforce instance or as a standalone. And if we jump to the next slide here, typically when customers raise their hand to start working with us, they're trying to solve one of three problems. The first is often around having real-time integrated and automated agent and agency compliance. So it's one thing to do all of this manually and have a team of staff that are downloading PDB reports from the NIPR database. It's another entirely to integrate all of this data in a seamless way to, as Kathy spoke about earlier, create a better agent experience. And that is point number two, which is companies will often come to us because they're focused on delivering a frictionless and modern producer experience starting at the onboarding process. Kathy, I was catching up with some friends of ours the other day at one of the biggest agencies in the country. They're a big Salesforce customer and an AgentSync customer soon as well. And they were telling me a story about how they were talking to one of their carrier partners, and they described to their carrier partner how that carrier partner was taking 50 days from the time that this brokerage raised their hand to get appointed to start selling their products to actually ready to sell. And we actually have a relationship with that carrier and knew that they weren't doing that on purpose. That was just how much kind of workflow bottleneck there was between one of their top brokerage partnerships and what it took to get them ready to sell. This brokerage then showed us kind of who were the best of the carrier partners that they worked with. And I was really proud of this because there were 3 carriers that they worked with that were under 10 days from raising their hand to truly appointed and ready to sell. Hippo, ClearCover, and Lemonade, and all of those carriers are AgentSync customers. So when we think about kind of the proof being in the pudding, typically the folks that are ahead of the curve and really focused on that great producer experience and that great ready to sell motion tend to use modern technology to accomplish that, just because of how complex this workflow is. The last piece that customers will sometimes come to us for is distribution intelligence and efficiency. So we looked at the dashboard at the end there, and that was a really good example of ways that you can actually drive marketing campaigns and sales efforts with more visibility into your kind of competitive landscape. We solve these problems in a number of ways. We have a couple core products. Our core offering is what we call AgentSync Manage, and that was what we just looked at for a demonstration today. We have a contracting product that agencies, MGAs, and BGAs can use to basically in bulk request carrier appointments with one single piece of paper instead of hundreds. And then we have a core API product where for companies that are more just looking to bring in NIPR data and ready to sell data more seamlessly, we can plug into legacy database tools with our API product. So these are some of the customers that say nice things about us. You can see Rick McCatherine, the CEO of Hippo. He's on our board and a good friend. And we work across property and casualty, life and annuities, and health. We work across agencies, carriers, MGAs, and everything in the middle. Our core focus, I would say today, is really in sort of the large carriers and large brokerages that are doing the acquisitions. So hopefully that's a little bit of an appetizer for the folks on the call in terms of what AgentSync does. And for those interested, feel free to reach out to me after this, Robbie at agentsync.io, or jump on our website, and we can give anybody who wants kind of a tailored, customized demo of AgentSync, and also how the AgentSync works with Salesforce and FSC in particular. So I think with that, I've been keeping my eye, Kathy, on the Q&A, and we've got a couple stacked up in here. Should we go there next, do you think?
Let's do that. And thank you, Robbie. I think that's fascinating to just see kind of what AgentSync has done, taking, like you said, a complex operation, making it so simple, so digital, so fast, 10 from 50 to 10 days, and really setting the tone for a relationship with an agent that, that sets the tone for speed, ease, and efficiency, which are super important to agents. So it's just really wonderful.
Thanks.
All right. I'm looking at this, Robbie, in the Q&A. We got a couple that came in. Let's see. I think this is a great one for you. So what 1 to 2 tips would you provide for more effective knowledge sharing between more experienced agents and new agents, right? So maybe different tenures there.
Yeah, it's a good question. I don't know that there's like a silver bullet answer here. I can share some of the things that our customers have done to drive more of a culture of enablement and passing knowledge from really one generation to the next. And I think, just so we're clear, that remote work has made this harder, where a lot of this interaction was happening at conferences, annual summits, these types of things, which are coming back into market. It's been more challenging for new agents to understand that effective knowledge sharing. I think it starts by, the carrier, for example, understanding what is the effective knowledge that needs to be shared, right? Are we gathering this from our more experienced, more tenured, high producing agents? And then you can think about what's the appropriate medium for communication to that new agent workforce. What we've seen work pretty well are things like newsletters that are interactive, where people would do podcasts, webinars, like self-serve type of content that agents can see on the go. I still think our industry is a handshake industry, Kathy, where people get together and share these stories in person on stages. But you've been doing this in the P&C space, and now really across all lines of business for a while. I'd be curious if you've seen any really effective techniques across the portfolio of clients that you're consulting.
Yeah. I've seen a couple. When you think about it, there's almost like this old apprenticeship model here, right? Where like a junior agent or a junior producer would kind of sit alongside a more senior tenured one, and then they would, learn over time together. And I think that to a certain degree, in a work environment, in an office environment, that still does happen. But what we're seeing too is, yes, everything you mentioned, the newsletters, the training, the knowledge management tools being built out, but also the ability to connect. So collaboration tools embedded into an agent desktop, so that as work is happening, let's say as a submission comes, as you're preparing a submission, as maybe there's a request for documentation for an underwriting exception, as a kind of any of these scenarios that are pretty common, maybe an agent's working a lead, right? Then it's a unique and different one. What we're seeing is, like, in the context of those workflows, the ability, if a question arises or a problem arises, for a more junior agent to be able to reach out asynchronously through either like a chat tool, think about Slack, but to ask for help, or be able to reach a leader or a manager of a team. And so that's what we're seeing is really valuable, because they're learning on the job, and it's really promoting kind of in desktop, still one single pane of glass, but the ability to not just do the work, but learn at the same time.
Yeah.
We have another question that just came in. So how are your more successful customers approaching agent onboarding in a hybrid environment? This kind of links to the other one, but this is specifically like onboarding.
Yeah. Let's take a example. So think about like a life and annuities carrier. The average, let's call it top 50 life and annuities carrier, as measured by direct written premium year on year, will typically have anywhere from 4 to a dozen unique ways of onboarding an agent. I'll give you a couple of examples. There are folks that call in via call center and say, hey, I'd like to get started and get appointed. There are folks that literally mail in or like physically drop off appointment requests, so paper. Fax would be included in that as well. There are channels, so think of things like DTCC, and Firelight, and some of the folks and our friends in the financial services industry that are kind of raising their hand to get appointed for a life insurance appointment typically. You've also got other technology providers like Suralcy, as well as homegrown agent portals. So I could kind of go on, but as you see, there's all these different methods for onboarding to get an agent started in the process. And I think the key thing is that it's going to be difficult and probably not realistic for us to just do away with all those channels. These are embedded channels that have been in our industry for a long time. The way that we think about solving this is creating effectively like an appointment request system, where we can ingest any type of appointment from wherever its source is in a really automated and streamlined way that then normalizes that information and ensures that whether you faxed in your request, whether you onboarded on a portal, whether you came in through a DTCC appointment request, you can still get that agent onboarded in 24 hours, which we've done for a lot of customers because the underlying technology to sort of ingest that information and then process it is standardized. So when I think about agent onboarding, that's what comes to mind. And hybrid environments, that is just another complex element, right, that we're throwing into the picture where we're seeing more and more carriers in particular push their distribution partners to go digital from an onboarding experience. And we're finding that they're having success with that because a lot of this information is coming from people's home offices, right? Where they don't have a fax machine or they don't have, the way that they would have requested it previously. So we are seeing a larger and larger percentage of agent onboarding requests come in through digital formats. And I think a lot of that has to do with the hybrid environment.
I love that. I'm watching time, but I have two more that just came in, and they're both for you. So is your solution tailored to both life insurance and property and casualty?
Yeah, great question. We work across all lines of business. And that's a really complex thing to do, as folks on this call, I'm sure, can appreciate. There's different rules and regulations and compliance across every line of business in every state. Fortunately, what we've done with AgentSync is we've abstracted that complexity out and put software on top of it. And so we work across life insurance, personal, casualty, and all lines of business across our industry.
Amazing. And how do you think about, this question is regarding kind of AgentSync and the overlap or integration with an agency management system, and pick any popular one you're thinking about, maybe like an Applied Epic. Talk to me a little bit about that integration or overlap with capabilities embedded in those type of solutions.
Yeah, so we've approached this in different ways depending on the client's needs, but a really cool pattern that we've seen is, again, going back to this concept of ready to sell. I'm an agent, I'm licensed in some specific states for specific products, and there's a bunch of downstream systems at my agency that require this information of what am I permitted to quote, bind, what I get paid commission on, et cetera. And what AgentSync can do is compress that onboarding time to really just a matter of hours or in some cases days, and then send that ready to sell signal to an AMS, to whatever other systems the agent is using. And so we've built some really cool integrations that we've used again and again with AMS systems, and play really well in terms of sending that ready to sell signal to the downstream system. But again, pretty dependent on the agency and their specific use case.
Yeah, understood. All right, I got one more for you before we take a break. And if there's any other questions out there, guys, feel free to drop them into the app here. So this is from Bruno. He says, we often focus on front end or onboarding and ongoing management of the agent or producer lifecycle with a carrier. How does AgentSync manage voluntary churn, right? So an agent or producer that stops writing business with a carrier, or involuntary churn. So think about a carrier that might stop business with a producer.
It's a great question, Bruno. And this is something that we've been spending a lot of time with customers on. The last 10 years have felt like grow for a lot of our clients. And oftentimes our clients think about grow in terms of onboarding and ongoing management. The world's changed a bit, especially in the P&C market over the past years with the rise of interest rates, cat events, and some of the biggest tier one carriers pulling out of states. There's been a lot of unforeseen things that have happened. And so what that has meant for a lot of our clients is actually shifting the focus into optimizing their existing distribution channel as opposed to expanding and finding more distribution partners. The way we think about that is, how can we use technology and automation to build workflows so that we can do things like manage voluntary churn, where, for example, perhaps there's a policy that if you haven't written, any business in the past 12 months, we're not going to renew your appointment. And if you spread that out over your entire, a lot of carriers might have 70% of their distribution channel that haven't written a policy in the past year. Why pay those appointment fees if we're not writing that business? And if we know we can re-onboard an agent in a matter of days, there's very significant cost savings there. So we think about our technology not just as an enabler of growth and new agent and producer onboarding, but also the ongoing maintenance and management of your existing distribution channel. And you need tools like the ability to bulk terminate or build automated workflows that can handle this on your behalf, as well as having an easy front door that folks can re-enter on the onboarding side when they're ready to place new business. And then in the backbone of all of that, we have tools like automated just-in-time appointments to ensure that you're capturing every dollar of savings that you possibly can along the way using software instead of having people hours applied to it. So it's a great question, Bruno, and something that our customers have really leaned on us for, especially in the P&C space, over the past 12 to 18 months.
Amazing. Robbie, we hit all the questions in the Q&A. This has been a great session. Any closing comments or words of wisdom?
We said that we would give the audience 15 minutes back, and it looks like we were pretty darn close to doing that. So I'm happy about that. I think in terms of closing thoughts, I'm grateful to be participating in this evolution that our industry is taking right now. And I'm really interested in learning about how folks at different, insurance carriers, agencies, MGAs are getting ready for this change in our distribution workforce, because it's something we think about every day. And also just grateful for you, Kathy, the relationship that we've had a chance to build over the past year, and always getting to learn from you and your background. So it's just been a pleasure, and I really appreciate it.
Well, thank you to you. We are so proud of this partnership with AgentSync. This is clear, compelling, important, insightful, and really, really, great software that drives outcomes. And so we couldn't be more delighted with the partnership. Really hope this audience got a great sense of kind of how the platform of Salesforce and AgentSync come together for one comprehensive solution that really serves agents at every turn. And I think this is the best is yet to come. I think it's such an exciting time to be in this industry, to think about all of the ways that insurance is modernizing, transforming, and changing externalities and internalities. It's a great time to be here. Exciting time. Best is yet to come. Thanks for joining us today, everyone.
Thanks, everybody.